In order to form our son, the god Nanahuatzin had to sacrifice himself. And TheKaileeConversation, our moon. Many more gods had to sacrifice themselves in order to form our world. And then came humanity. Now, the Aztecs weren't the first or only culture to practice human sacrifice, but they did take it to a whole nother level. So let's go over some of their rituals, ranked from least to most horrific, in my opinion. Let's start off with something light. Now, the gods and the sun needed to be nourished by blood, but to perform a human sacrifice every day would obviously be a logistical nightmare. Thus, the Aztecs practiced several forms of mini rituals that can be performed daily, and these may range from sacrificing other smaller animals to bloodletting of the self. This act in particular requires individuals to offer their own blood, pricking their tongues, ears, scalps, or even more intimate areas, like their penis. Yep, you heard me. It wasn't about inflicting pain for the sake of it, it was about sustaining the divine. You see, the Aztecs believed that blood was the most sacred substance on earth, the lifeblood of both humanity and the gods. But obviously, no person had to die here, so... boring! Huitzilopochtli is the big man of the Aztec pantheon, the chief god associated with the sun, military, war, and sacrifice. This god was honored in many Aztec rituals and festivals. However, his big moment came in the yearly festival of Panquetzalisli, which takes place at the 15th month of the Aztec calendar, around November 30 to December 9 in our calendar. So, who would be sacrificed? While slaves and criminals could suffice, the most prized and ideal sacrifice for this purpose were war captives. You see, warrior blood was of high value in Aztec culture, being seen as a way of elevating the military might of Huitzilopochtli, and consequently, the Aztec people. Now imagine this. You are a warrior from the encapsulated region of Tlaxcala, a region intentionally left unconquered by the Aztecs, so that your people can act as a never-ending source of sacrificial victims. The Aztecs have just waged a flower war against your people, one of several so far this year, and unfortunately for you, they came out on top in this engagement. You are bound, captured, and taken to the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan, just in time for the festival. You will be brought to Templo Mayor, the Grand Temple, where you will be ritualistically cleansed, dressed, and made to await your inevitable turn. All the while, you witness lifeless bodies ragdoll down the steps. This one in particular, you recognize. Well, it's your turn now. You will be taken up the steps. Looking back at the audience, they are also engaging in bloodletting, adding to the psychological distress. Once atop, you will be laid over a sacrificial stone, where your heart will be ripped out. Lifeless, you are thrown down the steps. Your body, your flesh, may be cooked and eaten in a form of ritualistic cannibalism, with your skull added to a tzumpantli. Tlaloc, a watery god. Even the name Tlaloc sounds like the noise a drop of water makes.
Tlaloc.
Like many civilizations for the time, the Aztecs were primarily based around agriculture. Thus, Tlaloc, a god associated with water, earthly fertility, and farming, will obviously be highly venerated. One of the festivals where Tlaloc was honored was called Atlcahualo, which takes place at the first month of the Aztec calendar, around February 2 to 21 in our calendar. Fair warning, the primary sacrificial victims here were children. Now these were usually the kids of slaves, but they may also be the second-born children of nobles, either of whom were selected for by the community. Regardless, records suggest that about 7 children were needed, around 6 years of age. They would be dressed in the style of Tlaloc. They were then carted off on litters decorated with flowers and feathers to the mountaintops of Cerro Tlaloc, where once at the summit, they would stay with the priests throughout the night. After which, they will be brought to the shrine of Tlaloc, where they will have their hearts ripped out. Now, the methods of execution do sometimes vary. In some festivals, they may instead be drowned, while in others, have their throats slit. So, that's pretty fucked up. Man, if I was in the place of one of those kids, I'd probably be so scared I'd bawl my eyes out. And, in a fucked up way, that reaction was actually sought after. You see, tears would have been seen as a good omen. The more your tears flowed, the higher the chances for bountiful rain in the upcoming season. But what if you, dear viewer, were in their place, and you were brave at heart, no pun intended, and so you refused to cry? A bad omen. Well, methods may then be employed to deal with you, to make you cry. They begin with, shall we say, less extreme methods, involving psychological abuse. Children would be taunted, shown the instruments by which they will be sacrificed with, and perhaps even made to watch other children being sacrificed prior to themselves. If these things didn't work, then they may involve physical abuse, with Spanish accounts detailing how they may be pricked with sharp objects, or even have their nails ripped out. So, as I researched this part, I found that apparently in the year 1994, the bones of 42 children were actually uncovered in an archaeological site at Templo Mayor, likely sacrificed to Tlaloc, and many of their bones showed signs of serious injuries prior to death. Man, this whole section was honestly pretty depressing to make. Feel free to pause this video and watch some cat videos. I'll wait for you. And once you're ready, we will move on to Xiuhtecuhtli is also known as the Turquoise Lord. He is associated with the year, time, and fire. That's a sign, if any, that sacrificing to him can get pretty heated. The ritual that I want to talk about occurs in the 10th month of the Aztec calendar, about August 1 to 20 in our calendar, in the festival of Xocotl. Question: what does this festival and a middle school party have in common? If your answer is awkward dancing, you'd be correct. That's because the night before the sacrifice, the captors and captive warriors would be appropriately dressed and paired alongside their captors would engage in a line of winding ritualistic dance. Following this, a vigil would be held until the middle of the night, wherein the captor will then cut a lock of hair off of the captive's topknot, which he will then keep in a wicker basket and hang in the ceiling of his house for the rest of his life. Once dawn arrives is when the fun actually begins. The captive warrior will then be brought to the foot of the temple, where he will then be given over to the fire priest, who will perform the actual sacrifice. The captive will be carried up the pyramid on the priest's back, and once atop, he will be thrown into open fire. He is being roasted alive. blisters will quickly form as his flesh melts away from the heat. But it is not over. The captive is then quickly pulled out of the fire, still alive, and then stretched over a sacrificial stone where he will finally be put out of his misery. Anyways, in terms of sheer pain, this ranks extremely high, but sheer horror, well, I'll have to give the title too. Xipe-Totec, the god associated with agriculture, seasons, disease, regeneration, fertility, and renewal. His name literally means Our Lord, the Flayed One. And trust me, that title is as brutal as it sounds. Take a look at this depiction right here. In Aztec art, Xipe-Totec is often depicted wearing flayed human skin, shown in yellow. And how did the Aztecs honor this lovely god of renewal? Well, through the annual festival of Tlacaxipehualisli, translated as the Festival of Flayed Men. Spoiler alert, they were not joking. So this festival takes place in the second month of the Aztec calendar, about February 22nd to March 13 in our calendar. And it includes fun, family-friendly spectacles, like tying captives to a post and having them pierced with arrows. Or its main event, gladiatorial sacrifice, where captive warriors will be brought to the arena, an open field with a Temalacatl, where he would be made to stand on top of as he awaits his fight. Now you might be thinking, he's a warrior, he's trained to fight, this should be easy for him, right? Nope, not right, not even 1% right. His foot was just fastened to the stone slab below. And his opponents, 4 elite Aztec warriors, armed with a macuahuitl, a wooden cricket-like bat lined with razor-sharp obsidian blades, so sharp they could cut through ya like butter. Don't worry, dear protagonist, a weapon will also be provided for you, a macuahuitl lined with feathers. Let's call this what it is. It's not a fight, it's a slaughter waiting to happen. The deck is stacked, and you are the sacrificial lamb. What commences is an absolute one-sided bloodbath. The barrage does not stop until the warrior is no more. Now that sacrifice was cool and all, but what truly makes this festival horrifying is what happens after death. You see, alongside death by arrows and gladiatorial sacrifices, Xipe-Totec may also be honored via sacrificing captives in signature Aztec style. That is, unlicensed heart surgery. If you were sacrificed via this method instead, then you may have your skin carefully flayed, dyed yellow, and given to a follower or priest of Xipe-Totec, who will wear your skin suit for 20 days, roaming the streets of Tenochtitlan, performing their religious duties, at the end of which they will break out of your skin suit, thus symbolically renewing themselves. Like a snake molting its old scales, or a germinating seed breaking out of its shell. Look at this artifact of an Aztec priest. Notice the double eyelids and double lips, the sewn extraction side of the heart, the yellow skin and how it's fastened at the back. Nightmares beyond my comprehension. A footnote. Notice how the flayed skins are constantly colored yellow? That's because Xipe-Totec is also the patron deity of goldsmiths. And here's where things get pretty interesting. The Nahuatl word for gold, the Oquitatl, translates to, wait for it, excrement of the gods. That's right, gold was divine poop. But don't let that nickname fool you. Gold was highly valued, and its theft was not taken lightly. According to some sources, those that were caught stealing gold might have faced a fate worse than death. It is hypothesized that such criminals would be imprisoned until the time of this festival, where they would then be paraded through the streets as a warning to others, and then be skinned alive. Now at this point, you might be thinking, man, this sucks. All these rituals sound brutal. If only there's a way that I could become an Aztec god, then I won't have to worry about any of this. Oh, you weren't thinking of that? Well, I was. And guess what? There's actually a way to become just that. During the festival of Toxcatl, a captive warrior can be chosen to become the Taixitla, or deity impersonator. You'd be ritualistically bathed, and then dressed in the style of the god Tezcatlipoca. And this wasn't just cosplay. You'd be treated like an actual god. People would worship you, bring you offerings. But it wasn't all lounging around, you see. You'd be taught how to walk, talk, sing, dance, and even play the flute, like Tezcatlipoca himself. Excuse me everyone, here's Wonderwall. For a year, you would live this life of glory. But then, about 20 days before the next Toxcatl festival, things will take a turn. You'd be returned back to your original attire, and then wedded to 4 beautiful women, who, by the way, were also impersonating goddesses. So, nice. Your final week would be filled with singing, dancing, and feasting. And then comes the big day. You'd climb the temple steps, break your flute as a symbolic farewell to your divine life, and then get your heart ripped out. Hey, can I use the bathroom right quick? Please?